been waiting here for like an hour and a half. Me too.
Alors, bonsoir à nouveau. Bienvenue chez les Chapters Rideau. Alors, accueillons chaleureusement le très honorable. Please welcome the Right Honorable Paul Martin.
Let me just begin, by saying that I spent a bit of time in business, I spent a bit of time in government, and then I wrote a book, and I am very much a rookie at all of this. I'm learning as I go. I found a book tour is a little bit like an election. You go from city to city, you meet nice people, but the great thing about this is I get to pick who won. And nobody is going to find out. So I think that from that point of view, there's a lot less pressure. But it really is, you meet wonderful people, and I am so grateful to all of you for being here. First thing I want to do is I want to thank Chapters. There's an enormous amount of work that goes into putting on one of these and to having all of you here. Puis vraiment, je veux remercier chacun et chacune de Chapters pour l'avoir fait. The other thing I want to do is I want to thank all of you to be here on a night when you could be out Christmas shopping. And if you want to go Christmas shopping, I got a great present for you. You can buy 10 copies. It's wonderful. Give them to everybody. You like that? We only got one book. Oh, for now. And then, to find yourself in a bookstore. I mean, we've all spent a lot of time in bookstores. You go through and you look at all of the different books, and you start to think a little bit about all of the work that went into them. I see Errol Mendes, he's written books back there. I see all of these people. But when you're an author, it's a very different perspective. Lorsque vous avez écrit un livre, vous rentrez dans un magasin de livres, vous avez une perspective qui est très, très différente. For instance, every one of those books is a competitor. Every single one of those books is somebody who's not going to buy this. I know. Yesterday I was in Halifax, and there was a cooking section. I kept looking at people. Why are you buying these books on cooking? You got to buy my book. Next book I write is going to be a book of recipes. So that's what it really is all about. It's about being with wonderful people. It's about having the opportunity to tell your story, and it's about having the opportunity, essentially, to say these are the kinds of things, the values that I hold, and where I think the country ought to go. Now, I have been asked, on me pose la question des fois, comment ça se fait que vous l'avez écrit si vite? One of the questions that I get a lot is, why did you write this book so quickly after stepping down? And well, there are a couple of reasons. First of all, Sheila and I are in love with each other, been married for 45 years. But she said, listen, you've now been home for a year and a half, for heaven's sakes, would you find something to get you out of the house? And so I wrote a book. I also wrote it for another reason that I think is perhaps a little bit more fundamental. When I was in government, you go into government because there are things that you believe in deeply, and you want to make them happen. And if you're lucky, and I was very lucky, you're able to make them happen. But a number of the things that I was able to do as Prime Minister, signing the National Child Care, the National Early Learning Agreement with all of the provinces, coming to the agreement with the Aboriginal leadership of the country and all of the provinces and territories in terms of Kelowna and the basic education of Aboriginal Canadians, proper health care for Aboriginal Canadians. The cities agenda, which essentially says that our cities, which is where we live, just simply don't have the revenues to provide us with the quality of life that we deserve, and there has to be an agreement which we signed with all of the provinces. Those issues have been put on the sideline. Most governments, when they are succeeded by a government of another political party, most governments see that the new government essentially carries on with that foundation. That's what's enabled us to build the kind of country that we have. And I cannot accept that a national early learning and child care program, that the Kelowna Accord dealing with the education and health care of Aboriginal Canadians, or the city's agenda, should be put on the sidelines and not carried through. And I want that debate to continue. The same way that I believe that a proactive foreign policy for this country, basically showing and taking a leadership role in Africa, is something that I believe ought to be carried through. Que ce soit les garderies, que ce soit l'entente avec les Autochtones, que ce soit les villes ou que ce soit le rôle du Canada dans le monde, c'est crucial pour moi que le Canada continue dans la même veine. Alors, j'ai écrit le livre parce que je veux que ce débat continue. The other reason that I wrote it is that there are debates that are taking place outside of our country that are very important. When I was the finance minister during the height of the Asian crisis, we came together, myself and the United States, to put together an organization called the Group of 20, the G20 finance ministers, because we believed that it was impossible for the finance ministers of Canada, the United States, a number of European countries and Japan, but only 7 of us, could essentially be the steering committee that the world needed to keep us out of the kind of financial crisis that we're in now. We created the G20 finance ministers and it worked very well. But when I became Prime Minister, I felt that this had to be duplicated at the leadership level. La raison était très claire. On avait des crises financières, mais aussi on avait toute la question des changements climatiques. On avait la menace des pandémies. There were a great wide range of problems that we felt that the world had to deal with, and there was no steering committee, no body that was capable of dealing with them. And I went out to see all of the G8 leaders, met with them all, I met with all of the G20 leaders, and we came to a basic understanding with all of those countries, really but one. And that was the United States as to the creation of the G20. And one of the things that I deal with extensively in the book, and I feel very strongly about, is the need to have that organization. And I've got to tell you that it's wonderful to be here in Ottawa to say that tonight the G20 leaders are meeting in Washington, called by George Bush, and that is a Canadian initiative, and it's now taking place on the world stage. And I think that's what this is all about. D'être ici à Ottawa, avec vous, to be here in Ottawa on what I believe is a historic weekend, which is taking place in Washington. I believe that to be here in Ottawa, with this audience, with all of you, this is the city where so much of it happened. My entire political career took place in La Salle in Montreal and took place here in Ottawa. And I've got to say to you how grateful I am to the people of this city, because you basically house the national capital. You make it possible for people from coast to coast to coast to come here and basically make the decisions that will benefit this country. So to be here tonight, with my book, with you, is indeed a great, great thrill for me. And I want to thank you, and I want to thank you for being here tonight. Merci beaucoup.